The National Desk, America's News, now.
Three wildfires remain active in California as firefighters gain momentum. But can they get the upper hand before homes go up in flames?
It is extremely sad and concerning that a community is facing this type of danger and vitriol.
Schools in Springfield, Ohio, closed for a second day following bomb threats. And they're not the only town to keep students home. Where else schools were forced to close. Then Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams speaking for the first time since NASA's decision to keep them on the International Space Station for another 5 months. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and three major wildfires. They continue to burn and threaten communities in California, but a turn in the weather is helping firefighters gain control. The biggest blaze, the Bridge Fire north of Los Angeles, now 3% contained. More than 50,000 acres have been burned and more than 40 houses and cabins have been destroyed. The Airport Fire in Orange and Riverside counties, 5% contained. That one has burned more than 23,000 acres. The third fire, the Line Fire in San Bernardino County, now 21% contained. It's burned nearly 38,000 acres and destroyed one home. At one point, it threatened 65,000 structures around Big Bear Lake. Temperatures over the weekend are expected to drop below 90 degrees, as low as 75, in fact, during the day on Sunday, which is expected to help reduce the threats. And the remnants of Francine are bringing heavy rain and thunderstorms to parts of Kentucky and Missouri right now. The storm has quickly been downgraded as it travels over the U.S. since hitting Louisiana as a Category 2 storm on Wednesday. Still, the risk of flash flooding over the Tennessee Valley and parts of the Southeast will continue into tomorrow. The National Weather Service warns that some of this flooding could be considerable, especially today and tonight in central and northern Alabama. Out in the Atlantic, the 7th named storm of the season, Tropical Storm Gordon, has officially formed. That forming earlier today. As of right now, the storm, not a threat to land, but forecasters say it is still too early to tell if it will continue on its path west towards Cuba or if it will turn north over open water. Threats against public schools continue in California. All classes there for schools in the Tamalpais Union High School District in Marin County, north of San Francisco, were canceled today after a bomb threat targeted the entire district. Police are investigating and seeking further information. Meantime, several schools and city buildings in Springfield, Ohio, were closed again today because of bomb threats, according to officials. Students at 2 elementary schools were evacuated and a middle school was closed. Police and explosive detecting dogs cleared several buildings yesterday following those threats. Springfield has been in the spotlight because of rumors that Haitian migrants are eating pets. A city spokesperson said there are no credible reports of that happening. More than 30,000 Boeing workers, mostly in Washington, are on strike today after voting to reject the company's latest contract offer last night.
We're out here, we're 33,000 members strong, and we're standing together against corporate greed, but most importantly for a living wage. That's what we're doing.
Proposed a 25% pay raise over 4 years, but union members wanted closer to a 40% increase. The strike will deprive Boeing of much needed cash it gets from delivering new planes to airlines. The last strike happened back in 2008. Voters still wanting more information on where presidential candidates stand. Can't count on another debate to answer those questions. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the sprint to November will be consumed with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris trying to define each other from a distance.
No, excuse me. Most of my Republican allies had said I was great in the debate.
The former president says there will be no more debates between him and Vice President Kamala Harris. It comes on the heels of the performance where multiple credible polls gave Harris the win after Tuesday.
What you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early. out of exhaustion and boredom.
People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies.
But some undecided voters told various media outlets they didn't hear enough about cold, hard policy proposals.
Well, we didn't get a lot of policy, if I'm really honest, at least in my opinion. We didn't get a lot of policy in that. It became very much about how they feel or the things in the past. And we didn't get any policy. We got very little policy. I won't say we didn't get any, we've got very little.
I don't think that she has actual policies that are going to be effective. I don't think that either one of them is right for the country. I really don't.
If there are no more debates, it will be up to the candidates to try and define each other down the home stretch. A lot of that will be through campaign stops and ads. Harris's campaign released a post-debate spot asking voters to turn the page.
There are two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past.
We're a failing nation.
While Trump is seizing on the idea that Harris doesn't have policy positions of her own.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan.
Her policies on her website are copied and pasted right from Joe Biden's website. They're not even hers.
Political advertisement spending tracker Ad Impact says voters are primed to see more than $2 billion in ads spent across all platforms this election cycle, more than what they saw in 2020. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
All right, Matt, thank you. And the Nebraska Supreme Court will allow competing measures that could expand or limit abortion rights to be on November's ballot. The Protect Our Rights measure would grant the fundamental right for women to obtain an abortion until viability. That's roughly around 24 weeks. The Protect Women and Children measure seeks to limit abortions after 12 weeks of pregnancy. 7 other states also have abortion-related measures on their general election ballots come November. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis did not appear for sworn testimony before a Republican State Senate committee investigating claims of Willis's misconduct in office. The committee subpoenaed Willis to answer questions about her handling of her prosecution of Donald Trump. Her lawyers have argued that the subpoenas are invalid. All of this comes one day after Judge Scott McAfee dismissed 2 more of the charges Fani Willis had filed against Donald Trump for lack of standing. Boar's Head is closing its packing plant in Jarrett, Virginia. This is the plant that produced the now recalled deli meats that have been tied to a listeria outbreak. According to the FDA, there have been 9 deaths and as many as 57 hospitalizations across 18 different states. Along with closing the plant, Boar's Head says they are permanently discontinuing sales of their liverwurst after an investigation found that was the cause of the contamination. And tonight, a troubling report regarding learning in the time of COVID. The National Desk's Angela Brown explains what new research has found about the impact to students' brains.
A new study just out from researchers at the University of Washington finding COVID-19 lockdowns prematurely aged teen brains. 1.4 years for teen boys, 4.2 years for teen girls. Their findings are based on brain scans for 160 teens ages 9 to 17. The brain scans were taken in 2018 and then again in 2021. Dr. Lee Richardson, founder of the Brain Performance Center, looked over the study.
And I read the study and it said the cortex was thinning, and that means they lose processing speed, they lose mental flexibility, all those things that you see that happens to people as they age. And it's harder because their brain's not fully developed as it is.
The big question, will there be recovery? Researchers simply don't know for sure. Dr. Richardson says the impact could be felt now.
In the classroom, it makes them harder for them to pay attention, to stay on task, to finish what they start. It can manifest both emotionally and cognitively.
Researchers say one reason for the greater impact on the female brain, the importance of interaction. Female teens often rely more heavily on the relationships with other girls for gathering and even talking to each other. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
We'll take a look at this video capturing the moment a train ran into a semi-truck carrying a tank. The crash happening yesterday in Goose Creek, South Carolina. The trailer got stuck on the railroad tracks. One person said they saw the driver trying until the last second to move it, and miraculously no one was hurt. Coming up, the Starliner astronauts have spoken publicly for the first time since NASA extended their trip by a few more months, how they're handling the big change. Then the new charge singer Justin Timberlake just pleaded guilty to, and the punishment he's accepted as part of the deal. And later, cancer, not fire, is the #1 killer of firefighters. What it will take to better protect our first responders. The Boeing Starliner is safely back on Earth, but the astronauts it took to the International Space Station in June, well, they remain in space, and they will be there for another 5 more months. Today, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams publicly spoke for the first time since NASA decided they would not return to Earth on the damaged spacecraft, saying that they're totally behind NASA's decision.
Things that I can't control, I'm not gonna fret over it. I mean, there's no benefit to it at all. Yep. So my transition was, maybe it wasn't instantaneous, but it was pretty close.
We're both, Navy. We've both been on deployments. We're not surprised when deployments gets changed. I mean, our families extended. Our families are used to that as well.
The pair are scheduled to come home in February aboard a SpaceX capsule. In the meantime, both of them, well, they say they've officially requested their absentee ballots this morning so that they can vote in November. The United States could soon change its policy on Ukraine's use of weapons provided by the West. 2 U.S. officials say it is likely that President Biden will give Britain the go-ahead to let Ukraine use British Storm Shadow missiles to hit targets much deeper inside Russia. Parts of those missiles are made in the United States. Biden met with British Prime Minister Starmer at the White House just today. Officials say there probably won't be a decision on that, however, until later. Russian President Putin warning that this kind of move would mean NATO was at war with Russia. Americans are feeling a little bit better about the economy, but still worse than average. That's according to research from the University of Michigan. The Consumer Sentiment Index increased from 67.9 last month to 69 this month in preliminary data. It's still well below the long-term average of around 85, according to Capital Economics. The report said Americans feel that prices of goods like furniture are lower, and many other items. Tonight, Miami Dolphins player Tua Tagovailoa facing calls to retire after he suffered a concussion in last night's game, the third one in just 24 months, sparking serious health concerns. When asked, Raiders coach Antonio Pierce today said he would tell the quarterback to retire and focus on caring for his young family. But Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel said it was a personal decision for the player and that others should not be weighing in.
I totally get how that's where people want to go to. I just wish that people would for a second hear what I'm saying, that bringing up his future is not in the best interest of him.
And McDaniel says Tua will be evaluated and that the team will progress appropriately. Meantime, Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill will fight the 2 tickets he received during a traffic stop detainment, according to online records filed by his attorney today. Hill has pleaded not guilty to careless driving and driving without a seatbelt. The minor traffic violations are the center of a police encounter that went viral, showing Hill violently being pulled out of his car and handcuffed. Hill's attorney also reiterating today that he wants to see the officer who detained Hill fired for failing to de-escalate the situation.
Even early on in the body camera, once he threw Mr. Hill down to the ground, placed his hand on the back of Mr. Neck, which is obviously we've seen it all around the United States. That's against standard operating procedure to use your hands to go against anyone's throat.
The officer has been placed on administrative leave as an investigation into his conduct continues. Video today of pop star Justin Timberlake entering a Sag Harbor court where he pleaded guilty to 1 count of driving while ability impaired. Now, that's a lesser charge than the driving while under the influence he was initially charged with in June when he was pulled over by police in the Hamptons for what they said was erratic driving. Police said he failed field sobriety tests. But as part of a plea deal reached earlier in the week, the singer today had to issue a public safety announcement about the perils of getting behind the wheel after drinking.
This is a mistake that I made, but I'm hoping that whoever's watching and listening right now can learn from this mistake. I know that I certainly have. And like I said, even 1 drink, don't get behind the wheel of a car.
Timberlake was given 25 to 40 hours of community service, and he'll be expected to pay a fine somewhere between $300 and $500. A new hearing aid option will be available very soon. The FDA just approved a software that will allow Apple AirPods Pro 2 to be used as a hearing aid. They'll have to be paired with an iOS 18 compatible iPhone or iPad. Apple says the iOS 18 is coming in October. The software is for people with mild to moderate hearing loss. AirPods are less expensive than many over-the-counter hearing aids, so it provides a nice alternative. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin with a violence prevention task force in California.
In light of September 4th's deadly mass school shooting that took place in Georgia, authorities want to share pre-attack warning behaviors.
When something happens somewhere else in the country, there's a period of time. It's a theory called contagion theory, in which there's about a 13 to 14 day window. When something major happens that's publicized, it could launch somebody else's pre-existing plan.
Captain Reynolds says studies conducted after mass casualty events show that in every incident there was a piece of information that was there. It just wasn't shared.
There's a student at school, maybe a teacher that's heard a conversation, or somebody else that has a different piece of the puzzle. And if I'm receiving 3 different items of information, it's not insignificant.
I'd like to know a little bit more about what went into this decision.
Meredith Elliott is the parent of a 3rd grader at James John Elementary School.
Like some parents, she had some questions about why Portland Public Schools announced a policy banning certain types of content from classrooms without discussion. The policy specifies that the rainbow flag and Black Lives Matter posters are district-approved symbols of inclusion, but posters advocating for specific positions on political positions are, quote, not student-centered, and neither are messages of personal expression. The change comes after the teachers union published a controversial guide in support of Palestine amidst the Israel-Hamas war.
What he believes happened was that his engine was manipulated with possibly oil put on, maybe the exhaust manifold, oil put in the exhaust pipe.
This is what Reading Police Captain Ron Isley tells me was included in a report to the RPD just last week, saying a member of the community privately met with people to sell their car, which they now believe was a scam. Police say during the scam, one person will distract the seller while fellow scammers pour oil into the vehicle's radiator, on top of the engine, and in the exhaust pipe, all to convince the seller the engine is blown and get them to sell for a much lower price.
And coming up, the roadblocks that could prevent firefighters from getting safe uniforms made without harmful PFAS chemicals. We'll be right back. Firefighters face known hazards at every scene, but there's an invisible and potentially deadly threat for them every time they respond. Firefighting gear is made with cancer-causing PFAS chemicals, and mounting science is proving the danger. National investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher reports.
When you look at firefighters, they sign up to go into burning buildings, but what they don't sign up to do is, of course, have the gear that they're wearing be the thing that's causing them to die.
Cancer, not fire, is the #1 killer of firefighters. And the disturbing irony is the protective gear they're wearing may be loaded with cancer-causing chemicals. PFAS chemicals, meant to repel water and oil and keep them dry, are also tied to a laundry list of health problems.
As a firefighter, it's scary to think that for years I wore something that potentially could years later cause me to have cancer.
A scary reality for Fire Chief Tiffany Green, but one that has persisted for years, despite a growing number of studies showing PFAS in gear and proving that wear and tear can increase exposure to the toxic chemicals. There's been little action to remove them until now. Green's department, Prince George's County, Maryland, is one of only 5 departments in the U.S. and Canada selected to test prototype gear made without PFAS.
But it's the actual gear that's making us sick. So anytime we can be a part of a change, it's going to ensure not only that they're going home to their families every night, but that they're in the best chance to save the citizens that we're serving is a benefit for everyone.
Assistant Chief Donnie Fletcher is rolling out the gear in real life and training scenarios to evaluate its performance.
Where we're seeing the gear has high levels of PFAS, though, is primarily in the outer shell and the moisture barrier. So the same thing that we're using to help shell this is what's poisoning us.
But going in, what are you going to be trying to notice with this gear?
We're looking for fit, flexibility, but also the thermal protection.
Foxtrot 3.
You guys ready?
And how are the guys reviewing it so far?
So far, they think it's great. It performs very similarly to the gear that we've been wearing for the last 10 years.
There's a lot at stake. The International Association of Firefighters estimates that in 2023, 72% of line-of-duty deaths were from cancer. Massachusetts and Connecticut have passed laws that ban PFAS in firefighting gear within the next 3 years. But despite state efforts, there's been no federal action to protect firefighters nationwide. With Congress stalled, there's another alleged obstacle, ironically from the National Fire Protection Association, which sets the standards for firefighter gear. The NFPA is being sued by the largest firefighters union, accused of imposing criteria that effectively require the use of PFAS in turnout gear and stifling the development of PFAS-free alternative gear. Are you optimistic about NFPA's position on this?
I am not.
If NFPA doesn't act in the best interest of firefighters, do you think that the collective voice of firefighters will be enough to get the gear that you need in place?
I do. I think they have the voice that matters here.
We asked the NFPA if it plans to amend its standards to promote the production of PFAS-free gear. It told us its standards do not specify or require the use of any particular materials, chemicals, or treatments for turnout gear. That said, the NFPA also told us they are developing a new standard that should be out soon. For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Lisa, thank you. It is Friday the 13th, and when we come back, how it came to be known as an unlucky day and why it may actually bring you more luck than you think. Today is Friday the 13th. That means a bunch of good horror flicks will be available for your watching tonight. But what you may not know is how the 13th became such a universally superstitious and unlucky day. Well, it turns out the 13th's reputation for bad luck largely originates from religious beliefs. In Christianity, it's associated with the Last Supper's 13th guest, Judas, who betrayed Jesus. Also biblically, many terrible occurrences happened on Friday. So there you have it, Friday the 13th. And the old saying is that things you're supposed to avoid today include breaking a mirror and maybe walking under a ladder. But if you don't buy into that, well, then at the very least, there's a whole host of good deals to buy into, from Wendy's to Krispy Kreme, and that will surely turn that bad luck upside down. Thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the National Desk. Have a wonderful weekend.